I know there was some concern about that earlier for the last meeting, so we kind of put that out. We put out postings to the schools for parents last week. We also need word of mouth to get more parents involved, because, for example, two presentations tonight. One is an update on our security pieces that we have in place. Welcome in the district, and the second one is on human trafficking. And so we really want to push these agenda items out, these presentations out, because they're really dynamic and of high interest on the topics that were brought up in the first meeting, actually. So without further ado, I'm going to get the safety department to come up. If you come up and share, this is for district safety updates.
Good afternoon. I'm Albert Munoz. I'm the lead security for the elementary schools and I was there part. Just a real quick update. If you're in and around the high school, you notice the fencing is I was just told on the way over here that the gates are now operational. So it is 100% completely fenced in the campus. So we put the new locks on there today. So that's complete. On the other campuses, it's really more of the exterior door stuff. The high school is the only campus so far that the state has come into audit. So at any time, the other campuses, they can show up and check the exterior doors. But we are pretty vigilant on checking them and getting our work orders in. If there's any issues, I think they've all been taken care of. I know I checked already 2-3 times a day. We don't have any issues. If they are, they're minor. Bedroom is not working, things like that. And what we're really concerned about is if there's anybody that's able to get in from the outside. Right now, there aren't any campuses that have any issues. We've I think the last professional development day, we've gone and taken a couple of training courses. At one was at Rifle Zone, which is more of a combat proficiency training for the officers, including myself. And I can tell you this: if in my 60 years of law enforcement, the training that we received out here in Ricardo, within the first 15 minutes, the training I've never gone through anything like it. The instructors out there are phenomenal. They fix little things on some guys to have them more proficient in their shooting. We know, we hope that we will never have to come to that, but you know, being a sharpshooter and making sure you're going to be able to hit your targets from the most important thing of all. And we spent a few hours out there, and it wasn't a lot of shooting, but it was more taking our time and learning. I'd be more accurate, which to me, like I said, within the first 15-20 minutes, there isn't law enforcement agencies around here that aren't going in looking for their training. I think it's interesting. We also went out to the Border Patrol station and used their virtual reality 300-degree. It's got a stage, and it was active shooting training where kids are running. Not only is it virtual reality, but it you can also get your commands and then talk back to you. So it was very, very good training. I don't know how much that machine costs. Very, very fortunate, and we are going to continue to use it because it's the most realistic thing that I've ever been a part of. Also, a lot of the training that I've done with the virtual reality has been flat screen, just like this. Making sure that perpetrators, shooters aren't carrying cell phones in their hands, this, and you have to look around, it's just like walking into the school. So we've got more of training with both those, with rifles on the hand and board before. Every one of our professional days, just to make sure that, like I said, our guys are more proficient, more prepared. So, that's where we are with, safety stuff. Does anybody have any questions? About anything, about any one of the campuses? I may be able to answer.
You also did some training on the professional day. I know you train custodians and do their maintenance for transportation also. And that's a lot of checking doors as
Yes.
like that, their piece and keeping the building safe.
Yes, Officer Pettis' house here at the high school, talked to them. Is a safety, it doesn't just include, the school hours. The custodians, maintenance, those guys are on campus after hours, and sometimes we may find doors that are unlocked, unsecured, propped open, and we got to make sure that, hey, up until today, you're still able to walk up to any of the doors, find something open, somebody can sneak in at night. I moved in from Austin. I was living in Austin for about 26 years, and over there is a homeless situation. Not so much here, but still, you just never know, right? You just never know who's going to be walking the track. We try to just get into the building, especially with the weather changing, the state of mind. So we talked to them a lot about that. But also, as big as the campus is here, you've only got two officers here. They can't be everywhere. If maintenance, if the custodians can help, making sure that some of the doors are secure. The elementaries aren't very big, so but I know at Harvey they do a real good job. The cafeteria employees do the same thing. They help. If something that come on, they don't hesitate to call. So the education part of that is we're extending it. I've talked to one of the other two elementary guys. They talk to the staff all the time, just with reminders. That way, most kids are safe at all times.
I know one of the biggest things that's affected, or it seems to affect our parents and staff, or the ramper system. That's new to everybody. So when you come in and you check in, you have to go through the raptor, you have to get tagged. So we know that kind of slows down. That's a great benefit to us to know everybody, to have a badge for everybody. Yes,
and the district is also going to, we're going to be implementing a new alert system through Rapid. All the employees will have an app on their phone. Easily to identify class officers, employees. If there's an emergency, if it starts in one of the classrooms, the teacher's going to be able to push a button, alert everybody, not just on campus, but at the central office, police department, sheriff department, fire department. So we're stepping up our game through that Raptor system. So that's why it's another reason it's really important, because all the emergency contact information for the students is also when you register your kid for the campus, your child, everything's put in there. It's easy. Now it's going to be easy for the parents to contact. It's also going to be easier for the teachers, because let's say you have a fire drill and one of the students is in the restroom, one of the other teachers picks them up, and then the only teacher doesn't have them on their list. The other teacher can put it, hey, I've got little Johnny over in my class, okay, and it'll alert them, okay, he's fine, not to have to worry about it. So in the security and the safety, we're trying to step it up a notch for everybody. Everybody doesn't have to worry. Everybody's safe. Monthly drills are being conducted on every campus. Yes,
Has, anything been updated as far as the drills or teachers doing anything differently? I know they have like standard active shooter drills and like they form them, but has anything as far as how they do it?
no, not really. There's a standardized way. I can tell you this, at Harvey, in the lockdown drills, we've done one so far this year, that some of the teachers that have like restrooms in their classes, instead of taking the kids over to the corner, they'd actually take them inside and hid them in the restroom. So they took it upon themselves to go that extra, take that extra step for their safety.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest concerns was like for the adaptive learning unit. It's almost impossible to tell the kids be quiet. They're not gonna be quiet, so I always wondered, okay, how are they gonna handle that? And, you know, obviously they're gonna try and hold them still or, you know, contain them in a certain way, but I just always wondered how they would handle that.
In the,
Best of their ability.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why they have multiple aides, you know, in there, not just, you know, reaching for the aides right there.
I was working those stuff on here. Well, my son is in it, so I just, and it's, I know people, I would have a lot of, and we practiced it frequently, and I would practice it more frequently than the school actually practiced. We did all kind of drills just on our own. And I would set it up to where I had fidgets and different things and snacks, and I keep them. A good teacher's going to do what they need to do to keep the kids where they need to be.
That might be a good idea to put in emergency packs and put a couple of digits in there. And that's, we already have emergency packs to pick up, so that might be good. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I would even love it if like the moms or dads, we got to do together and we donated snacks and little fidgets and, you know, things that we think our kids would, you know, feel comfortable with. We can, maybe some like little goodie bags.
That might be a good subcommittee to put those together and recommend.
I love that.
The biggest changes, I think, are coming with the Raptor system and that, being able to roster online, because if they don't grab their grade book or their purse and their their notebooks and all this kind of stuff, because they're in a hurry, because they're gonna be in a panic, they still have it on their phone. And I think that'll really help with the reunification of parents as well. And we won't have to wait, you know, in some places, you're like, oh, we had to wait and we didn't know where my child was, because there weren't programs like that. So I think that will really help us have that digital piece to it.
Yes, and that the Raptor system is, I mean, it's expanding so much. In talking to other companies that are kind of piggybacking off the Raptor, there's some that are now putting sensors on these exterior doors, and if the door doesn't close all the way, it's kind of like when you go to the convenience store. You open up the refrigerator and it stays open too long, it starts to beep. You're gonna have those sensors on those. You know, they'll be part of that Raptor system and say, okay, well, number 17 is a door, you know, so they're starting to implement a lot more as well. So
It's hard to break habits, you know, when you're dealing with a lot of students going in and out of doors, and we're used to propping open and things like that, and thinking it's fairly safe. But the world is changing, so.
it is. We're creatures of habit. We don't like to, you know, change our ways. I've been in around youth for many years, playing baseball programs in the Austin area, and you know, as we get set in our ways, and we want to take shortcuts. But when it comes to safety, we can't, and that's why the district is taking those extra steps and doing the things that we're doing for the safety of kids and the staff and back to everybody on campus. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm at that is, how long or is it in the plan for this year, or when did you go keyless, like just for the badge, like keep your badge to get in? Is that anytime soon, or?
Yes, from my understanding, they're trying to implement it as fast
Yeah.
as we can. I know that we're taking another step at RV, where we're the only campus that has some of the faculty parking behind those gates. And today we talked to a company that's coming in for electric gates, so the question is not teachers are going to get in now. Well, if you want an electric gate, guess what? You're gonna have to have the keyless entry. I know that they're pushing for everybody to have.
I think that I don't know, it said, like, they had 75 cards for the district or something, and they're working to get more. So I think they already have some. that they're going to discuss.
And how, in the event, like, there's, I don't know, a glitch with that is, like, is there still a way to open with the key, or how does,
Yes, all the doors will have
still the
the
same?
key.
It's just-
There's glitches every week.
Right.
Yeah, some
Okay.
days mine will work on some doors and some days it won't. Couple of hours later, it's like, okay, now it's working again. It's
So
what
it's
happens.
just,
In the school district, I was an SRO in the Austin area for 3 years, and we were based out of the police department. So not the school district. And my same team worked at the police department and in the schools. And I know that we're trying to get the sheriff's department and the police department, I believe they have the same badges. In order just put in their numbers into our system, if something happens
Mhm.
during the day, obviously, but let's say at night, there's an alarm that goes off. I don't hear my phone at night. It's a do not disturb. As the police department, sheriff department, we have to go and check onto the campus and get in. They've all got the maps. But one of the things that I've suggested is right at the very beginning is that everybody needs to have access. It's easily manageable. When you're in, when you're out, you can just have them just per campus. You can even put times on. But nobody can go on the weekends unless you're given permission, right? So I know that's in the works with everything else.
We also have really, kind of shored up the badge. We've been going through an external vendor. We're bringing most of the badges. Right now, we have HR has an employee badge system that we just put in last week. And so there is no wait time. We might have had to wait 2 or 3 weeks in some cases, when there were a lot of new employees coming in. Now we actually make the badge upon intake of the day that they come in as they're being hired. So that is going to, I think, turn around, so there won't be a gap of when employees have it, or if you lose your badge, we can easily and very quickly remediate that situation. So between that and the Raptor, I think that is going to show up pretty well.
And to me, the badges, it's quicker,
yeah,
if I use a key, if for some unfortunate reason, there's an emergency and I have to unlock the door coming from the outside, everybody can rush. That door's get locked. You just pull the key out and take off. With this, it's faster. It unlocks, you open, it closes, it's locked. You're not having to physically.
Is that gonna be for every door? No, some people have masters and some people don't. So is that even gonna open like
No,
every
so
door?
they're programmed per campus. So,
Because mine only opens my office
so
and the hallway, so. Or somebody else has to open the key, so like say if nobody's there with the key, like with that key card open.
it's simply hardly, I think some of the keys can open the back doors from the playground. And some of them can't. Some people have the physical keys to open up, come in recess. And some people don't, they gotta have it. Yeah.
that's how it is on our campus.
And all that has been discussed in the safety meetings, because It is, it's constructive.
Cause I know we had an instance that we had a fight and we wanted to go one this way and the other that way, but we were stuck and so. It was not a pretty sight. I was wondering, because that's what we run into, because sometimes the ladies are. They're not busy with parent over here or the other one's over here, so that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, and those are probably gonna be the little, you know, bumps that they're gonna have to figure out per campus. It hadn't been a big concern in the past until we won. Right, now every little thing, we've got to think about.
Well, everybody going out, I've been here 4 years, everybody that has been in the main office at National Holidays. But, now it's like changed, so the hands are in tighter hands.
Ms. Wilson, can you put that, make sure that's in the notes, and we'll take that back, understand them all, and the big hearts, and access for, let's really talk about the grand master kind of thing for each campus, so we can bring that back up and see where that, maybe get some information back to you the next time as well, where they're going with that.
Yeah,
I know that it's always trouble to have everybody have a grand master, that's not gonna happen, but
yeah. Like I said, with the changes in the security gate at Harvey, I believe it's gonna be a swipe line. You know, it's sitting there in traffic in the middle of the road. It's gonna be a key, you know, you can punch in your code, but I've suggested this, because it's just, again, it's just it's a lot bigger to get in and out. So right now, we've got to walk outside and open, close, and lock, and Harvey's used for lunches for a couple of other campuses in the city, so, you know, then the deliveries, the gates are always opening and closing, and we're just trying to get to it. It's a whole lot easier and a whole lot more secure, and all the time, you know, instead of trucks going in, we have to leave it open, because you don't know when the next one's coming, you don't know when the trash truck's coming, you know. So eventually, I'm hoping that everybody is.
I think that all the districts, I was at a HR training this week and they were talking about security as part of it, and they were talking about just how much implementing just 2 or 3 new steps was costing and how much work it was, so, and then how issues come up, so I think as long as we keep these kind of forums and communication open and give information back, and they keep bringing it back to us, but I think everybody's struggling with that same thing, but.
Yeah, we have a
We just
safety
really-
committee meeting after this that I have to go to, and I'll bring it up. There as well.
I know on the plus side, now that because I'm at fences that have been up, I know in the past, was always calling to the front office because there was always kids coming back and forth. Now I haven't seen anybody.
Yeah.
So that's been really good. I know here recently I had to call our security guy because there was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 kids coming across like back to campus. The fence hadn't been completely up. And some of them had hoodies, you know what I mean? Just out of
Right.
caution, I called and it got taken care of. So,
Yeah.
but ever since then, there's been no
The guys like,
bit of walking.
Even the custodians were saying that their understanding of their safety procedures, like there's some of the first people that see someone come onto a campus. So if someone comes in and has a badge or doesn't have a badge, they're most often the first people to see them in the hallways. And so a lot of times they weren't really confronting them, saw you, but they really didn't say or come up and greet you or say, you know, who are you? Can I help you? Kind of thing. Part of that's customer service. Part of that's identifying people that don't need to be on the campus. So I think we've seen a big turnaround on that, of where the responsibility lies, so that we're a full team
Right.
looking at that too. So I think that is things that are and giving them kind of a right to have those conversations as well, and not feel like it shouldn't be asking people who they are. Because we need to know who everybody is in that campus. I get asked all the time, who are you? You know, because stuff gets turned around and.
the athletic director was on our campus the other day. He left his badge in the truck and they didn't let him in. He's like, we know who you are, but you don't have your badge and you don't have a tag. So he texted me, he's like, well, you come to in the back, what do you need? He goes, and I'll let you on campus. I said, go get your badge. That's supposed to, you know, same thing when I walked in here today. So you guys think. How did you get it? So, so everybody's, getting used to it, vigilant on keeping an eye out. It takes a little bit to change if that happens. Doesn't happen, and it's happening, and it's a good thing overall for the district.
We want to thank you for coming in and sharing your update. Does anybody have any other questions? I know he's got to run off to the second meeting in a few minutes, but. Thank you so much.
Again, I'm at Harvey. If you have any questions, you can always shoot me an email, follow up to the school. It doesn't matter which campus you're on. I see every day.
And I have to give kudos to you and the ladies who, help escort our kids in, because, we're that habits are hard to break, and you want to sit and chit chat and say, good morning, hold on, now it's okay, thanks for your kit, bye. And they want to shut that door right away, so they do really an excellent job.
And I did drive license too.
Can't parallel park.
But she's getting better. She's getting better.
And you just
I-
were right on the bus with that one.
Yeah, so anyway, thank you. Like I said, any questions, don't hesitate.
Sure. Our next guest, Keith, I honestly can't remember your history, except you're wonderful.
Thank you.
He came and spoke to our parents last year, about 30 parents. Hey, Mr. Cookball. He came and spoke to our parents. Our school board president is here, Brian Cookball.
Nice to meet you, sir.
He came and spoke to our parents about human trafficking, and he is bringing us another speaker to talk about the fentanyl crisis in January, which kids that are overdosing. So I introduced you, Heath Parker, you can tell him your background.
Okay, just briefly, I've been in law enforcement since 1995. I began in Alpine, Texas, way out in West Texas, as a police officer there for several years. Was a DEA task force officer there another 3 years, and then I went to the federal side where I was a U.S. Customs Special Agent assigned to Presidio, Texas, working with the Port of Entry, border of Mexico. After that, I went to Midland, Texas, and when I was in Midland around 2007, I became a computer forensics agent. My job was to go through cell phones, laptops, iPads, whatever, to find evidence involving children and child exploitation cases. So I did that for about 7 years, and in 2015, I came out here to the Corpus Christi area. And around 2012, I started doing presentations in schools, talking to students, let them know about the dangers of these child exploitation cases, as to what we are seeing in our investigations, ways to keep them safe. So that presentation has evolved into parents, law enforcement, anybody that we can talk to about how to keep kids safe online. In addition to those cyber safety presentations I do, kind of morphed into human trafficking. So I just want to give you guys some information on human trafficking that we've seen here at the Coastal Band, which for me and my investigations, give you an idea of what you're seeing currently. I'm not going to be deaf by PowerPoint where I read every single slide to you guys, so just skim right along and just know we're going to talk about human trafficking and sex trafficking that we see here in the Coastal Band. If you've never heard of HSI or Homeland Security investigations, I really like videos because they do a lot of talking for me. So I'm going to hit play on this thing and hope it don't blow you guys out too loud when I hit play on this thing. different types of crimes here in the coastal bend. I would say, investigating sex trafficking and human trafficking is probably one of the hardest investigative cases I've worked, because we encounter victims who are really not wanting to cooperate. They have been damaged by their traffickers so badly that a lot of them don't know any other way of life and what they are doing at that moment. So that's one of the worst things about working these types of cases. Just to give you an idea of Homeland Security and where we're at, we have a footprint throughout the United States as well as globally where we have offices. So if we need help in any of our investigations, we can reach out to these other offices, not only in the U.S., but also throughout the world. Wherever we have a U.S. embassy, we have an HSI agent stationed at those locations. So one time I had a case in India where my suspect was trying to entice nude images from my victim in Texas. So I took all my evidence and I sent it to New Delhi, where my suspect was living at, and they actually found out that he had other victims in the United States. So I actually picked him up from New Delhi and flew him to Washington, D.C. for prosecution. So a lot of these types of cases that we work have a global impact. It's not just here in the coastal bend, it's actually worldwide. We work with a lot of different agencies to do these cases. We're not sitting behind our desk and just talking on a cell phone or telephone and computer. We're actually talking to different groups. In the bottom left-hand corner, there is a human trafficking task force here in the coastal bend that supports law enforcement as well as these non-government organizations, such as New Life Refuge Ministries, Purple Board, that helps our victims get back on their feet again if they are finding themselves in a trafficking situation. The task force has funds, so we're able to help our people get our victims back to the apartment, new identity cards, whatever they may need, they help them along the way. In the upper right-hand corner, I always like talking about the CAC, or the Children's Advocacy Center, because they're so important in our cases that if we have a case involving a child, we want the child to go to the CAC where they can be interviewed to make sure that they're not a victim of a crime. Many of our interviews with the CAC are audio and video recorded. We are in law enforcement. We don't go into those rooms with the children. So one-on-one conversation with the child and the forensic interviewer. And we hope that that interview, the audio and video recording, becomes the evidence in court to be able to be used against the suspect. The last thing we want to do is have one of our victims end up in a trial situation where they're having to testify. So we really hope that this is something that can help us out. Now, just because a child goes to the CAC does not mean they're a victim of trafficking or sex trafficking or anything like that. What happens in many cases, our children are around other victims. So children will outcry to other children, and our best evidence is having that child forensically interviewed and give us the evidence that we need. Because kids will get scared of the guns and the badge, and they would rather talk in a forensic interview setting where it's just one-on-one, a plain room to get us the evidence that we need. So stats, a lot of people like hearing stats. This is about 2020 when this was created. Total victims throughout Texas, 313,000 to 79,000 Indian minors and victims, minors and youth, and 234,000 coming from the workers in labor trafficking. We talk about trafficking, a lot of people don't realize the labor side of this. We do see this quite a bit. In fact, there is a case not too long ago in Rockport where somebody was working at a bakery, I guess you could call it, was being forced into trafficking and working very little or no wages. And that person was granted money because of the wages that they suffered in that investigation. A lot of money we see in these trafficking cases, over $600 million. And the cost of the state of Texas is $6.6 billion, mainly because of victim services, trying to help our victims get back on their feet, get them what they need in these types of investigations. There is a human trafficking hotline that you can call, the 1-866-DHS-2-ICE. You want to call that and ask for assistance. If you find yourself in a situation where you're encountering somebody that is trafficking, we encourage you to call 911 and local police first. And this phone call to us at DHS would be a secondary or follow-up phone number at a later time. If there is an emergency for trafficking, your local police should be contacted first. Human trafficking is not the same thing as human smuggling. In fact, smuggling is the movement of people, and trafficking is a coercion, the forced, fraud, and coercion of somebody made to do something that they do not want to do. And I myself, I like videos. So I have another video to kind of help explain the difference between smuggling and trafficking.
What is human trafficking? Human trafficking is modern-day slavery. It is the exploitation of a person through force, fraud, or coercion. Human smuggling and human trafficking are different crimes. Human smuggling is the illegal movement of someone across a border. Human trafficking is the illegal exploitation of a person. Human trafficking is about exploitation, not transportation. Human trafficking is a highly profitable crime and a violation of human rights. It occurs in every part of the world, including here in the United States. It happens in our big cities, our suburbs, and even in rural towns. It can happen to anyone. Human trafficking victims can be US citizens or from other countries. Victims can be any age, race, or gender. But one thing they share is that they are vulnerable to being exploited. There are different types of human trafficking, including sex trafficking, forced labor, and domestic servitude. Sex trafficking victims are manipulated or forced against their will to engage in sex acts for money. Sex traffickers might use violence, threats, manipulation, or the promise of love and affection to lure victims. Truck stops, hotel rooms, rest areas, street corners, clubs, private residences. These are just some of the places where victims are forced to sell sex. Any person under the age of 18 involved in a commercial sex act is considered a victim of human trafficking. No exceptions. Forced labor takes on many forms, and it happens here in the US and overseas. Through forced fraud or coercion, victims are made to work for little or no pay. Very often, these victims are forced to manufacture or grow the products that we use and consume every day. Victims of forced labor can be found in factories, on farms, doing construction work, and more. Victims of domestic servitude are hidden in plain sight, forced to work in homes across the United States. Their traffickers sometimes take their identification papers and travel documents in order to limit their freedom. They are prisoners, working as nannies, maids, or domestic help. Every year in the United States, thousands of human trafficking cases are reported, but many more go unnoticed. That's because human trafficking is a hidden crime. Victims might be afraid to come forward, or we may not recognize the signs, even if it's happening right in front of us. We need to bring this crime out of the shadows. That's why the Department of Homeland Security created the Blue Campaign to take a stand against modern-day slavery and help combat this heinous crime by raising awareness of human trafficking around the country. But we can't do it alone. We need your help. So what can you do to stop human trafficking? Visit the Blue Campaign website to learn more about the signs and indicators of human trafficking. Share this video on social media to help bring this crime out of the shadows. Be an informed consumer. Know who makes the products you buy and the food you eat to help keep slavery-tainted items out of your home. And finally, recognize and report suspected human trafficking. You can submit a tip to federal law enforcement online or by phone. For victim support, you can call or text the National Human Trafficking Resource Center. Help us bring this crime out of the shadows and into the light. Join the Blue Campaign. One voice, one mission, end human trafficking.
All right, so the main thing you're gonna hear over and over and over today is force, fraud, coercion, force, fraud, coercion. When people hear the term trafficking, a lot of them think that it's purely a sexual driven type activity, and it's not. It also includes people working in some type of service, not receiving the care that they need, not receiving the extra money they should be getting in these situations. So force, pretty simple. It's physical restraint, physical assault, sexual beatings, torture, burns, and just threatening them of violence. Pretty simple when it comes to force. Fraud, it can look like coercion as well, but many it's false promises. You promise them to have different working conditions. You promise them that they will come in and make more money than they're actually working where they're at now. And then over a period of time, they just get to the point where I'm not going to make this change. I'm just going to stay with where I'm at because it's easier to put up with where I'm at now than try to change something and go to something different. Now, once the fraud is discovered by the victim, the force can come in. Now, what's important about force, fraud, and coercion, you don't have to have all three. You can have just one thing of force, a beating, fraud, the false promises. And then with the coercion, we're talking about threats as well, or perceived threats, psychological manipulation. And we see this a lot in where people believe that trafficking occurs when some random stranger rolls up on them, they kidnap them, and they force them into a sex trade. And that's not what happens. A lot of our trafficking victims, they know they're offenders. They can be family members, they can be close friends. A lot of these things happen to our victims that we just kind of fall into. It's not any fault of their own, they're just taking advantage of. They think they get into a relationship, they're gonna have a new boyfriend, and everything's gonna be great. And all of a sudden it just turns into a psychological torture and meetings. So some of the physical and psychological behavioral of human trafficking, a lot of fear. That's the biggest thing that we see in these cases is just the fear. Because once we encounter our victims, we feel like, hey, I'm law enforcement, you should come to me and let me help you out. A lot of them, they know no other life than what they're going through. You know, their life has been centered around this one person that loved them, and now they're their only source of food, their only source of shelter, their only source of safety. Even if it's a beating, to them that is safer than going to some stranger wearing a gun and badge. They don't make that connection. Relationship can turn into trafficking. And sometimes drugs and alcohol are our biggest things, as well as psychological issues. Many of our victims we come in contact with and try to get them help with services at the very beginning of wanting help, but they don't have their medication, or they start going down a slippery slope of fear of not knowing what's going to happen next. So a lot of our victims would just run away and never come back to us. So it's very much a psychological driven type investigation. And you really have to put yourself out there to try to get their trust to come and talk to you. Some of these victims also live in their place of employment. You see people working in a location where the employees never leave. They're just always there. There's never a vehicle that they leave or come back in, or food is being brought to them at the business. There's cops and veterans inside those businesses. Those are big. Now, is there a majority, I guess, assuming are nurses here for this SHAC meeting?
I don't think the majority are. We do have nurses here, community members, administrators.
Okay, so some of the things that you might see is heavy makeup being used to cover up bruises, burns, and maybe even tattoos. And you'll see this mainly when they're going to go ask for help. They're going to do the best that they can to try to fix this person up and not look as bad as they are. Also, a lot of our victims, they are from out of the country. They fear law enforcement because the country that they came from, they may have been beaten, tortured, or sexually abused by law enforcement in their home countries. So when they see American law enforcement, they don't see a difference. They just see the badge and the gun, and that's bad. And they do not want to cooperate with this. So it's very important that when we encounter these traffickers, that you look as non-law enforcement as possible, and we bring in our victim services people as quickly as possible to do the interviews with them. When talking to somebody that's being trafficked, and they want to come forward to you and they're asking for help, but they're really scared about their immigration process, let them know if they are cooperating with law enforcement, we are allowed to help them with immigration documents to help them stay in the United States. Now, it's kind of a twofold thing where if they're cooperating with us, we're able to give them documents, but they have to be able to stay with us in the investigation and continue on. And with this immigration process, when it comes to our victims of trafficking, they can actually work their ways into a citizenship. But we are able to help them get a job, their social security card number, their work permits, and they can stay here in the United States as we're working this investigation. Once the case is over, it doesn't mean they get booted back. They can stay here as long as they want. If they want to go through that process of immigration, then they can do that. We have special visas that are for our trafficking victims. So what do you think is the easiest way to find victims? Schools, right?
Kids recruit other kids.
That, and as well as like social media, you know, we're starting to see Instagram, gaming situations, and things like Discord. A lot of these gaming platforms is where kids are going when they don't have anybody else to talk to. That's where they want to talk to anybody that will listen to them. When I'm doing my school presentation to kids about these gaming systems, if somebody tells them to put on headphones, they need to be wary, because that means they don't want anybody to hear what they're going to be told. they want to keep this conversation between them privately. Online predators know that unless you're logged into that account of Instagram, no one else is going to see that communication except the person that is logged into that account. So they're not going to put anything up on their wall on Facebook or something in their story on Instagram. It's all going to be direct message or instant messages behind those apps. Discord, if you're not familiar with Discord, this was an app that was created for gamers, online gamers. They go on there, they use Discord as a way to communicate while they're playing these games, and they share content through that private app. It's encrypted in the end, so no one can see what's going on, including the Discord. Now, what we're seeing now is that people are looking for children, they go to the gaming sites, try to talk to them, they know that's where the kids are going to be at, more than likely it's going to be kids more than adults. And then they send them a Discord link, hoping that they'll go to that one-on-one chat room and talk to them. If you hear the term server within Discord, it's really just a fancy term for chat room. That's what they're doing. They're going into this special chat room to talk to kids. Now, if I know I'm talking to a kid, I want to go to FaceTime and look for those clues that will help me find out where this kid might be located. And then also, if say you find an Instagram account where you know that that's the child you're looking for, a lot of kids are creatures of habit where they will use the exact same username across all platforms, so they can be easier to be located and found, so they can be the next YouTube star. And unfortunately, what's going on is it makes it easier for the person to find them. So if I find that Instagram account that's some girl I want to talk to, and that I can't see her pictures, I'll take that same username and plug it into TikTok. And now she's just going to see me as user 8, 9, 10, 12, won't have any idea who I am. And now I can see what's going on. But a lot of kids are also pretty bad at their usernames. You know, like if you have a senior in high school right now, if their username says something like 2005, then tell you it's the year they were born. So now it's easy to find ages of kids. If I use a search engine in Instagram or TikTok, now I can plug in those numbers to try to find the age range that I'm looking for, because they're using their dates of birth or their years they're born, or maybe a senior using 2023 right now. That's the year they're going to graduate. So those telltale signs that they're using their email or their usernames is helping identify who they are online. And then of course, Snapchat. I warn parents and kids in school all the time. I served a search warrant on a case one time, and I had no evidence on the device itself, but the search warrant from California, when it came back, had 3 years worth of data to help me in my investigation. I had the chats, I had the videos, pictures, GPS locations. Everything was still on Snapchat, even though it was deleted from the phone. Snapchat still retained those records as a part of their selling their customers information for money. So they don't get rid of the stuff. They will keep it. So some of the things we see in trafficking victims is tattoos, you know, as a way to represent that person belongs to them. It can be symbols, it can be words. The European brand is pretty much like a barcode, and it'll usually be on the back of the neck or hidden in the hair. But that's usually a European thing. So if you have someone that has a European accent, you might want to look at those areas. Crowns, roses, currency, those things are pretty common when it comes to tattoos. And it's going to be hidden as much as possible if they can. You know, they don't want anybody to see it. They want them to have their hair down behind the ears, on the ear itself, behind the ear. Those are locations that we might see these tattoos. Some of the trafficking signs we may see in school, you see kids with that secondary cell phone. You know, they may have one phone, but now they've got another phone with them that just showed up out of nowhere. Why does that child have a second phone? People that come to the campus that talk to themselves like they're an aunt or an uncle to that child. You know, some of the things I've seen in other schools, we have strangers that would go drop off food at the front desk. That way these kids can have food, and it's a way for these traffickers to get close to the kids and give them food as a way to entice them during lunch when no one else is around. Also, the female recruiters is very common in these situations, because those female recruiters were the first victims of that suspect in the trafficking. And once he has that female recruiter beat down, she will do the work for him. Because if she can find girls to work under her, then she's not being trafficked, and she wants that replacement. And that way she's using the money, she's making that money, and she's not having to do people work. So she's that middle, we call that a bottom. So the bottom will find their ways to find more girls to come in. So it's, we're looking, people think we're looking for this guy in a van that's gonna pull up and drag these kids off. And it's not, it's very subtle. It's like a grooming, a relationship, trying to find these kids. And the best way I can explain to you is a case that I had not too long ago. Was about 3 years ago. Corpus Christi PD was working an investigation where they were pretending to be people calling girls into a hotel room. A girl showed up at the hotel room. When she pulled up, there was a car that pulled in. The girl got out of the car, came to the hotel room. They made the arrest of her. And they went to the car where she was dropped off and within the car, and there was another woman with an infant child in the car. The infant child belonged to the girl inside the car. The girl that was being trafficked or that was up in the hotel room during this investigation stated that she had a brother who was killed by gang activity. One of her brother's friends said, "I'll help you make money because if you need help, I'll be your brother's keeper to help take care of her and make sure everything's okay." What he did is he told her that the way they could make money was to be model. Go to a hotel room. She was not kind of into it, but he gave her marijuana, alcohol. She got high, passed out, and they used those photographs as leverage to make her report to trafficking. So we did the investigation. We figured out who this person was, and my victim still didn't want to prosecute. She did not want to go to court. She didn't testify. She said, "No." So I know who this guy is. I know where he lives. But if I don't have a victim that will testify, I have no case. And I think that's probably the most frustrating thing with this trafficking case that you have. You're either facing a psychological issue or you're facing a fear issue that we just can't make them testify in those situations. So some of these common tactics that we see of these predators, fear is their best tool. Offers of easy money. When they text when they know that the person's going to be alone. Drugs and alcohol are made to easier to exploit them. Corpus Christi, a couple of years ago, we were seeing people going in to restaurants right before the pandemic that were giving them lots of money for their Instagram or their Snapchat handles. That way they could communicate with them and give them a $50 tip. Let me know when you're back in town again. I'll drop off another $50. What they were doing is they were just mining for social media accounts. That way, once they do on Instagram where they're posting their pictures, they will know where to go find them elsewhere away from that restaurant. So they just wait to buy access to them. Free gifts, promises of unrealistic gifts that are promised on the moon and anything and beyond. And they just really try to isolate the child from their family and friends. And not just children, but also adults as well too. And constant fear of law enforcement. When we see our people that are immigrants that are being trafficked either for work or for sex slaves, is mainly the immigration people. That's what they're using against them. They don't have their documents, they have no way to prove who they are, and that's what they're using against them all the time. Did this happen here in the coastal bend? Absolutely. Texas is ranked number 2 when it comes to trafficking. In fact, the first case of sex trafficking was prosecuted in Oasis County, where the subject Joe Long Miles was given a 40-year sentence back in 2016. So the best way to explain how we get cases here in Corpus, Texas is looked at as a circuit. These girls are constantly being moved over and over. They'll be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they go to Lubbock, down to Midland, Odessa, where there's a lot of oil money, down to Austin, and then down to Corpus Christi, where they're going to go to the beach for a vacation, but they continue to work. So they're constantly moving these girls on the circuit back and forth, but they're never in one place at any given time. The best way we can combat this is just the education and outreach, talking to people about wanting to volunteer in their community. If that is something that you want to do, let me know. We do have mentoring programs within the Coastal Bend Human Trafficking Task Force that we can get you in contact with if you're interested in that. And I'm doing my best to make it in 30 minutes. Yeah, got 6 minutes left. So I hope that wasn't way too fast, but I want to make sure you guys got all the information I didn't convey to sleep and keep it here all night. That is my contact information there. The phone number will go directly to my desk, and the email, if I'm able to look at my email address and check emails tonight, I'll definitely be emailing everybody back if they have any questions. Does anybody have any questions about today? Or cyber? I can talk for days on cyber safety, but anything like that.
Amazing information. I'd like to get more out to our community. With this, something we can really get bringing this back and sure maybe doing a really PR push for it as well.
Whether it's this or cyber, doesn't matter.
Well, and you mentioned the cyber earlier. I was really interested in bringing cyber back.
I think last time you were here, you did about an hour presentation, we did more videos and films and showing stuff like that about cases you'd actually done.
I think it would be interesting for our students to see a presentation like this, because some of them may be in that situation and not realize it. And it might trigger, okay, this person is, they're targeting me, they're trying to get rid of my family, they're showering me with gifts, they may not even realize that they are being groomed. And something like
That
this.
really struck me here recently, like in the last month. I usually give cyber presentation to seventh graders, to high school students. And I was really shy about talking to sixth graders because either they're really advanced or they're really low, you know, it either goes over their head or they don't get it. And I went to do presentations at GP in the sixth grade, and they said, let them have the full presentation to give the seventh graders. Okay, you want it, that's what we do. And I did it, and at the end of the presentations, I talked to the kids, and I was shocked that a lot of them didn't understand that taking a nude selfie was wrong. They have been so much around nudity and everything else, they didn't get it that their own nude pictures, because everybody else was doing it, they didn't think it was bad for them.
Or taking pictures of others.
Yes.
Is wrong. And sharing.
So the presentation, we were able to squeeze it down. Usually it's an hour long for the high school students and middle school. But since GP was on a tight schedule, they were able to squeeze like 45, 50 minutes for kids in school here. So that was kind of good. It was exhausting, but it was able to get the kids the information that they need. We talked about the apps, the state law, what could happen to them if they get arrested for this. And at the age of 10 years and older, they can be actually arrested for juvenile crimes.
If we were interested in doing a student presentation, could you bring it back as a screening to this committee so we could?
Sure. We could even put it up as like a parent presentation, and we go into like the dark web, the Tor, apps that are being used, where they hide the calculator vault, where they hide pictures and things like that. Some of the new vaults that are up called Keep Safe, where they're able to hide information in those apps. And that's one thing when I do with parent presentations, I don't want kids there, because I really don't want them to understand how we find things, where we find them, and give them ideas of what they can do. So that's kind of the tricky part, is being able to keep the kids away from the presentations, because parents are like, I gotta keep these kids with.
We also talked about certain icons that kids are putting on their phones. Their last time that were indicative of other things that weren't necessarily games. Do you remember that, or was I dreaming?
Well, mainly they were talking about emojis, you know, just like the grapefruit,
Right.
the eggplant, you know, melons, bananas, the body parts instead of actually saying words. Just using emojis. So,
Things to recognize on kids' phones.
and it all comes down to communication. You know when your kid has a bad day and something's wrong, you ask those questions like, hey, how was school? Boring, nothing happened, but you ask them what happened today, and they just kind of shut down and don't want to talk. And that's when you start digging. Putting your fingerprint in your child's iPhone, that way you can access your phone at any time. Some of those tricks are very cool. My son taught me that. He did it fine.
Amazing what they know that we don't.
So I learned a lot from him.
So Texas is #2 in the nation in sex trafficking.
Trafficking. So that's sex trafficking and trafficking of people workers.
What is number one?
California.
Sort of either. It was either. Yeah.
Well, you got that border, you know, where people come across all the time. So,
No, even the username was interesting to me, because I've been guilty of doing that myself. Start a new job, use the year, maybe not so much a year of birthing.
one thing that I've noticed in these student presentations is that I'm giving them to have the counselor and people on the side looking back into the crowd. After a while, the kids forget that they're there, and you'll see reactions to those on the screen. You'll see open body, you'll see girls with like a hand up. I had one girl last week just like stare off into the space, and she just looked at the ground the entire time I spoke. And I told the counselor, "You see that?" Yeah, so it's a good way, as not only just the information, and your attendance logs will show that they were there, and if you have an issue, like, no, you were here this day, when they talked about child exploitation, you know the law, and you were there to that. But it also is a way to find out where your issues need to be at students as well. And tell them. And I show a video where I hope that the boys say certain things or laugh about it, because then I tell those in the audience, hey, you see what you're working with, you see who's in the crowd, who does not have your back. So it's kind of it catches everything all at once. It's the Amanda Todd story is at the very end. I don't know if you're familiar with Amanda Todd, but she was a girl that was bullied into suicide by a guy that lived across the ocean in Norway. And so I talked about that case as well at the very end about cyberbullying, what she went through.
I know we haven't asked the principal to stop. But it seems like possible student presentations.
I think would be good. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking of some of the students that we talked to since August, and some of these things where they are starting to shy away from family and friends or family events. They're hanging out with just certain people. And I was at your last presentation last year, so I'm familiar with what to look for, but it seems like it's becoming more prevalent now. And as we get further along in technology, and you mentioned the gaming, because they use avatars. So it's so easy to disguise, the predators disguise themselves as an avatar, and the teenager using an avatar. They just think they're playing, but it's really eye-opening. I mean, thank God my kids are grown, but then I start thinking about my grandchildren who are still high school age and middle school age, and I'm always in their business. I ask questions that most nanas don't ask, but I need to know who you're talking to. Who you're talking to.
Some of the problems with seniors and juniors, they think they know it all, and they know when they're trying to get catfished, they don't say anything. Well, if they would hit that button and do report, it would generate a report for us to start looking at the person as a suspect. Instead of these kids just like, that's predators, I'm not that lot. Well, they need to identify them so they know who to go after. And we've had several NICMIC cyber tips that come back here to the Kingsville area. You know, we know that there are people here in the area that are downloading child pornography and accessing. So I know it's an issue. I mean, I've arrested two boys that were here not too long ago that were sharing child pornography with one another. So it's, we know it's happening. It's not like it's not going on. But
But it's like they say, you don't see it, I say out of sight, out of mind. That's how the majority of the parents.
Well,
As
if
long
the
as they're not
parents,
misbehaving, they're okay, but that's not.
and then gaming and cell phone is the babysitter. Just go do your thing in your room and one box and I'll do my thing. That's where the bad stuff happens. So,
And they get shot.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, you have the authority and the power to check your kids.
and I'll tell students and parents the same thing. If I'm doing an investigation, and this phone number is doing something bad, I don't know that phone belongs to a student at Kingsville High School. That phone belongs to an adult, and I'm gonna go investigate that adult and go after them. It's not until I talk to the adult about that, oh, that's not your phone, it's in your name, belongs to your child. Okay, now I know about your child. And so what these kids are doing with these phones affects their families first and foremost. They don't know who they're just doing their thing with the phone.
So what's the best thing a community or an organization like this can do to help, like with the Blue campaign? What's our first step?
When it comes to trafficking, the main thing is just the awareness and outreach, doing more presentations, stuff, and know what some of these signs are. I think if you go after the cyber angle, you kind of eliminate some of the trafficking things, because everything kind of goes back to who you're talking to, strangers. And then the trafficking is at the end where you talk about relationships, because that's when you're seeing traffic, or it's people that they know are exploiting them, kind of making it to a bigger relationship. Like it's.
Because I think you said a couple of times, people think it's the van that pulls up and snatches. That's what people think. Right. I mean, even me, and I know that, but that's what they think, and I think that we need to change that.
The manipulation of somebody, something they shouldn't be doing, but just taking that before it follows.
Is there a program like Crime Stoppers where people can call in tips and go, like in the old high school, we used to have Crime Stoppers of kids doing drugs at schools or something, they would report it and then they would go to the bank and get like a $50 gift card or something. Is there anything like that associated
Trafficking.
with this trafficking thing for people to report anonymously?
The main thing is that DHS2 ICE tip line, but we do not pay. We're just going to receive the information and investigate what comes into us. One of the things that's rough about that is we're only good as what they give us. You know, so our people that are on the line getting this information in, they don't ask the right questions. There's still something we follow up. So if you ever come across that situation where you're talking to a child and you encounter them, the biggest thing is not gonna do a mom thing. Like my wife, like she's gonna has no vote face, so everything's gonna go crazy. So the best thing is to just be there to listen and take everything down and not be judgmental. And the more information that you give helps us so much. Like even a username on Snapchat, they come into the office and say, "I met this guy on Snap, his name's blah, blah, blah," and write that down. That may be enough for us to just get started with that type of information. But as far as a tip line that would have any money payouts, I would say no. If there's a tip line that's already being used, like a crime stop in Kingsville, I would use what's already been established and continue to use that to get that traffic information. It's already in, it's been used, it works.
Once you do presentations to student bodies, whatever grade level goes, do you have like posters and things that we can hang with signs on there? Just to do that, is that kind of?
I haven't seen anybody do that. The closest I had was, is I talked about being a sheepdog in my presentation. And an hour when I finished the presentation, it was supposed to like group of leaders. Who's gonna be that person that you got to ask for help. So that was one thing that they did as a school. And that's the only that I've seen after.
If we did that, that might be good, because we hang posters on a lot of things that we post. And so that way, at least there would be more access to that.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have like pamphlets or flyers?
Not with me,
No,
for,
because like when we do open houses, we have literacy night. I mean, a booth set up,
That's it.
for like the parents or something. Because parents will be taking their kids to it, but just to get like the pamphlet or like the information of the game or whatever, you know.
I could do something like that where I set up a table and bring in some material to hand out to parents. But my funding is like very little, so.
No, I was just kind of like somewhere where like the parents are going, because our parent meetings are like at 9:30. Or like my son, they're during the day. We already, you know, whether we watch it going on, we're working. And this is something like literacy night at school, at like 5 to 7, or more parents are available. We'll get information.
Yeah, I could do something like that. I could even like set up a projector with a bunch of apps on the screen. That way they'd be able to run and talk about these apps. Kind of break the ice. And know what to do.
I think that would be a good way to break them.
Even just a parent presentation to get it started too, that way the parents know what's coming
Sure.
at their kids. And if you want to sit down and go through the slide, I'll show you exactly what we do on what's being said during the presentation. That we're aware of what we talk about. You know, some schools get kind of or what's been talked about.
Well, and after elementary, so to have the kids hearing, you know, you kind of don't want. kids to hear things, 'cause they
And those are the ones that
know-
are using more than I use.
And I've been working with the CAC and workers where they handle the elementary school level kids. They have their own outreach presentation, and then from the middle school up is what they do. So we kind of share that.
I shared CAC's contact information to the 3 elementary counselors today for them to do presentations.
So during a parent meeting?
No, for the students.
Oh, okay.
For the parents, I'll come in and you talk to the parents at the elementary level. It's just my stuff's kind of or like the scared straight prison.
Well, I don't even know, it's just suggested.
And typically when we have these kind of presentations, we have an opt-out or an opt-in solution for that, so parents either have to opt in to have their students part of that presentation or opt out. Nowadays, it used to be opt out all the time, now it's considered opt-ins.
And I have write-ups that describe what the presentation is about, that we can just copy, cut, paste, and throw in whatever we do. That we, you know, create what we talked about.
But I think it's always good that a committee like this screens it or something. I mean, that's actually the purpose. It's not the biggest.
So if you want, I can do one where like I'm talking to the students, you know, watch one of those instead of a parent. You know, that we can see what the students can hear.
I just want to say thank you very much. This has been very insightful, things that I had not even thought about. I've seen some presentations. But, you know, it's just an awful thought that kids in our county are experiencing this, and that Texas is number 2. That's taking of that.
And one of the reasons our kids get into it is because they have such low self-esteem and no confidence, and you see a lot of it coming from single home families where parents are not able to be at home with their kids. I mean, single home families are where it is now, you know.
A pipeline from the border of Mexico, is going right, you know,
Right.
Starbucks, and you got Chick-fil-A, that's where we just saw that. So if our kids are going to work at those places, they gotta be aware of what's coming in the door, what they're gonna be encountering from the items. Just gotta be aware.
Are those the big things like Chick-fil-A, like?
Not really, but that's just what's been attractive to the guiding through, you know, get on the valley, we're trying to make a harvest, it's a great place to stop. Because you've got two good places you wanna go to right here. Plus you have an influx of college students that kind of A&M students, so you have that outside, that comes into the community as well, that they're gonna be aware of what's out there after hours, so. Navy base, so I mean, you've got a lot of everything here that kind of comes in the community. You just gotta be aware of you can't just be meeting random people talking to strangers.
Again, thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions? We look forward to collaborating with you.
Yes, my pleasure. Let me know. Who's got my number? I can send out some cards too. Well, you have my cards as well.
I have.
If you got an extra, I'll take it.
Do it.
Dr. Williams, you have this card? Yeah.
So let's talk really quick about hot topics. One of the things that came up at the first of the meeting was going back to our emergency backpacks and possibly putting some extra items in there. Is that something, you know, where those backpacks are, or what the protocol was that? Did that go through, understand what kind of items? What was it that we brought up? Fidgets and things like that, or some, it could be just in the behavior unit or sped. That's
We'll just make maybe a separate pack.
or maybe just for the sped.
So our
Behavior unit.
center school,
Right.
they got like a little ring lock on them,
Yeah. I remember this.
Yeah.
Look at them in the outside. Right.
we don't open them. Unless.
And those fidgets, some of them are really small. They collapse into each other as well. My granddaughter's 11, she has anxiety issues and she has fidgets everything from purses. I think her backpack is actually. Other interesting, hot topic areas that the committee would like to look at through the year. Again, we have 3 more meetings coming up on January and March and one May. So we'd love to bring other presentations that are on topics of interest to the community that you think we need to be aware of, that we need to involve in. So any of those that you can think of?
Mr. Harvard was gonna give us a DEA agent to do a fentanyl presentation on the fentanyl crisis. He gave me his name and number, I think I sent it to you by email, but we had scheduled him for January 23rd, if you'd like to pursue that. But there is a fentanyl crisis.
And it's
Also, a baby, baby is growing, and I asked the student today, can you please explain to me what the vaccination is for our baby? And she said, well, I started it because everybody else was doing it, but now it's like I can't quit. So it's addictive. And we have a lot of students that are vaping. Some are nicotine, others THC, or whatever else is out there. I mean, it's dangerous.
see if we can find somebody to bring it to the home. Other areas.
If you're interested in the Children's Advocacy Center, they do their own outreach for what they do. Part of their processes, and how they interact with kids and families.
I'm gonna bring them in the next time and have us put on all the opportunities to go through already sharing community as well. Can you do the contact link on that one and see if that becomes our January 23rd?
Gonna do one.
Here, talk to the child advocacy stuff. And then if you'll do the fentanyl piece for January 23rd, with those two pieces. I don't know how much security days we'll have on that, but if there's any follow-up to that, based on the audits that are current, on the ones that may people coming, we could bring that back if there's something that's significant on that. Anything else you'd like to see? Because it would be nice to get them set up for those 3 months in advance. If there's anything interesting. Is anybody interested in working on the, like a short-term subcommittee, maybe one meeting to see about putting those figures and things like that into that, I can let Ms. Wilson work with that, she doesn't mind. You already have the Mercy, are the Mercy backpacks coming through you or not?
We make them, they're distributed through Dr. Sandbar. We put them together with the list of, and they have 25 more to put together because the nurses don't even have them. So I don't know where the distribution went and they closed the memorial and flavor. I have no idea what they're purpose. You know what happens. They turn them into the front office or they're reissued every year or something. But I don't know what happened with flavor and memorial when they closed the school, because that was at least 50, 60 backpacks.
I like the idea of the attachment. I mean, that to put it on would be really good. So that might be something we look at. If you're interested in working with that or have any ideas on that, you can just email me at sholt@kingsvillisd.com and we'll kind of get a little group together working on that. Might be good to have someone instead. We're gonna get with Lisa as well on that. All right, at the beginning of the meeting, just to kind of follow up, we had talked about last time, actually selecting a chair. But of course, we had more members present the last time because of competing meetings tonight. We don't have as many, so we're postponing that to January 23rd. So right here at the initial piece of the meeting. So if there are no other questions or things that you would like to share, we're going to adjourn.
Just so you know, January 23rd, March 22nd, and then May 17th.
May 7th.
March 22nd. March 22nd and May 17th.
And if you don't think of anything now, but you think of anything 5 minutes after, kind of like an interview, right? And they ask if you have any questions, and you leave them out. If you think of anything, be sure to shoot me an email, any kind of presentation you would like to see. Thank you for your time, your attendance. It's always important to us. Thank you.